In this video, I'm going to cover the penalties around filing your taxes late and paying your taxes late. And I'm going to cover this topic for both business and personal income taxes. So whether you're an individual who has a job and you just receive a W-2, or if you establish a business, so maybe you have an LLC, and that LLC is either taxed as a sole proprietorship, an S corporation, or a partnership, this video is going to cover you. But before we jump into that content, if it's your first time watching, let me just quickly introduce myself. My name is Navi Miraj. I'm a CPA who typically puts content all over social media to help people save thousands of dollars in taxes. But this video is going to be a little bit different. It's going to help you save money in taxes, but it's also going to help you avoid fees and penalties. So if this is something of interest to you, continue watching so you know what you might be in for, whether you're a new business or you already have a business that's established. So the way I'm going to kind of discuss this topic is going to break it into two different categories. The first one being failure to file. So we'll talk about failure to file penalties, and then the failure to pay penalties. And again, we're going to talk about this if you're an individual or if you have a business. So let's kind of discuss these one by one. So again, how I'm going to cover it, we'll do failure to file for individuals, failure to file for businesses, failure to pay for individuals, and then failure to pay for businesses. But let's start off by covering the failure to file for an individual. So this would be a penalty if you didn't file your taxes on time. So normally the due date is April 15th, and you can avoid a failure to file penalty by filing an extension, all right? So if you file an extension on or prior to April 15th, then you'll receive a 6-month extension, which will sort of extend the time for you to file by 6 months, bringing that date to October 15th, all right? But an important distinction to note here is that the extension gives you the additional time to file your taxes, not additional time to pay your taxes. So if you're filing an extension, you should probably send in an estimate, all right? You may not know exactly how much you're going to owe, but if you send in an estimate, you could avoid some of the failure to pay penalties that we're going to talk about later, all right? So what is the penalty for not filing your tax return on time? Well, admittedly, it's a little tricky to calculate, of course, it involves the IRS. So the idea though is that it's not a fixed amount. It's actually based off how much taxes you owe. So rather than try to explain this, rather complex formula that quite honestly will probably just confuse you, and not taking away anything from you will likely confuse me, and when I'm explaining it, I'm just going to share actually a website with you that I sometimes use to calculate an estimated payment amount or penalty amount, right? So, and I'm not affiliated with this website or anything like that, and if you're watching on YouTube, I'll leave a link in the description below so that you can easily click on it and access it, right? So let's go over an example so you can kind of see what this looks like, all right? So this is the website. It's efile.com, and you can see the extension here, late tax filing penalty calculator. So in this example, let's use the 2021 tax year, okay? And I'm going to say this is a failure to file penalty, right? So I'm going to say, did you file a tax extension? No. And I'm going to just, in this example, use $1,000 is what you end up owing, all right? I'm going to click next. And so this next question is tax return filing date. So this is like, okay, well, when did you actually get around to filing your tax return? So I'm going to use the date of May 15th. And what day did you end up paying the $1,000 of taxes that you owe? So in this scenario, I'm going to say you prepared your tax return on May 15th. When you found out how much you owed, you then went ahead and paid that as well. So the day you filed was the same date that you paid, which is about a month later, right? They were due on April 15th, and you're doing this in May 15th. Do you have an installment agreement? No. Okay, that's an arrangement you can set up with the IRS if you owe them money. And we'll click the calculate button here. And so you can see the penalty for late filing is $45, okay? Again, it's a formula. It's based on how much tax you owe. So what I mean by that is I could change some of this. So I could say, I don't owe any taxes, okay? And I still took an extra month to file my tax return. And date taxes paid, well, I don't owe any, right? So I'm going to say they were paid on April 15th when they were due. If I calculate this now, you notice that the late filing penalty is 0 because the late filing penalty is tied to how much tax you owe. So if you don't owe anything, then you don't owe a late filing penalty, all right? But that doesn't mean you shouldn't file a tax return. You probably should, especially if you overpaid and you're expecting a refund. Then the only way to get that refund is to file the tax return, right? All right, so that being said, let's cover the failure to file for a business. It's quite a bit different. So if you have a business that is taxed as an S corporation or a partnership, the S Corp or partnership tax return, which is a separate tax return than that of your individual return, is actually due on March 15th, okay? So that's 1 month earlier than your individual tax due date, right? Your individual taxes are due April 15th. So I'm saying your business tax return, that's an S Corp or partnership, is due March 15th. Now, you can file an extension on or before March 15th and receive an additional 6 months to file your business return. Again, you just fast forward the date 6 months. So now you have to file that by September 15th, okay? Now, the failure to file penalty for an S corporation or a partnership is a lot more than the penalty on the individual side. But, lucky you, it's a lot more, but it's a lot easier to calculate. But it's costly and these things add up fast. So you gotta be careful with this, okay? It's currently $205 for each month or part of a month multiplied by the total number of shareholders if you're an S corporation or partners if you're a partnership, all right? So these penalties can add up very, very fast. So if you have a partnership, right? And by definition, that partnership would have at least 2 partners, right? It would be you and maybe someone else. And you wait until May 15th to file your partnership return. So that's 2 months behind, right? It was due in March and you waited till May. That's actually, it was due in March and you didn't do it in March, you didn't do it in April, and you didn't do it in the early part of May. So remember, the penalty is for part of a month as well. So it's $205 times 3 months, which is $615. And since there's 2 partners, that's $1,230 for just being a couple months late, right? From March to May 15th on filing that return, okay? So with that said, how many of you are panicking a little bit right now, right? This might be making you cringe, right? Let me know in the comments below, and don't be shy. A lot of people get tripped up by this, so you're not alone. Trust me, I get comments about it all the time. In fact, prior to becoming a CPA, I filed an S corporation return late, and it sucks. I know the experience, and getting the letter in the mail, which is going to happen for you too. And you opening that and seeing that you owe potentially thousands of taxes for filing that return late. Let me help you though. What you can do is, just get your tax return prepared and filed as soon as you can, all right? You'll likely, sometime after you filed, receive a letter from the IRS, probably a few months later, and you can try to what's called abate these fees. So if it's your first time offense, you may have a good chance of having the fees either reduced or in some cases eliminated all together. So that's a good news, right? Especially if it's your first time offense. So I don't want to derail too much from the topic of this video, which is, the fees for filing late. But I do want to let you know that I created another video about, what would happen if you have, or if you even have to file a tax return for your S corporation or partnership or sole proprietorship. So you can check that out real quick. I'll just give you a summary. S corps always have to file a tax return, even if you have no income or expenses. Partnerships can sometimes get away with filing a tax return, or I should say without filing a tax return, if there were no income and expenses. So give that video a watch, okay? I'll link it up at the end of the video if you want to see that. Now, I want to mention sole proprietorships real quick. So if you have a sole proprietorship, then those taxes are on a schedule called a Schedule C. And the Schedule C is part of your individual tax return. So the late filing penalty for not filing is the same as what it is for an individual, right? And we covered that a moment ago. So it's not really any different if you have a sole proprietorship. It's not any different from what we covered when I said what the penalty is for filing late as an individual. All right. Now let's transition to failure to pay penalties. So we just talked about failure to file penalties. Let's talk about failure to pay. And again, we're going to cover this in order. We'll do individuals first, then businesses. All right. So the failure to pay for individuals, we kind of cheated and discussed this before when I showed you the online tool that you can use, right? So generally, the failure to file, so what I mean by that is you saw it on the screen. I'm going to show it to you here again. So generally, the failure to pay penalty is not that bad. It's 0.5% of the unpaid taxes for each month or part of a month that the tax remains unpaid. And additionally, of course, the IRS charge interest on the penalty, but the interest rate itself is pretty low. It's not like a credit card company that's going to charge you 20+%, okay? So let me show it to you real quick. Let's move back over to our screen and let me go back to the example where you owed $1,000, okay? And you paid this, you filed your return about a month late and you paid the taxes a month late as well, all right? So this was due in April, but you did it on May 15th instead of April 15th. So you can see we covered the late filing penalty earlier, but the late payment penalty is $5, which is 0.5% of the $1,000, okay? And there's a little bit of interest on it, $3.09, no big deal, okay? So the failure to file penalty is a lot harsher than the failure to pay penalty. And this is especially true if you're a business, okay? So in my opinion, I think the IRS is actually pretty reasonable here because you can see sort of how the math flushes out and it's not that bad, okay? Now let's talk about failure to pay for a business. Now, if you have a sole proprietorship or an S corporation or a partnership, all of those businesses are considered pass-through entities, right? You might have heard that term, pass-through entities. So what that means is that the overwhelming majority of the time, the business itself doesn't pay any tax. These profits from the businesses flow from the business into the individual tax return. So if that is a new concept to you or you don't quite understand that, don't worry. I actually have a video on that topic too, and you can find it on YouTube. It's entitled How S Corp Taxes Work, but the concept actually applies to partnerships. So I kind of prepare an S Corp tax return there for you real quick, and then I show you how the S Corp itself doesn't pay taxes, and that money flows into your personal return, and it's at the personal level that you determine how much tax you owe. Again, the same concept applies for a partnership, right? So the penalty for failing to pay your business income taxes doesn't really exist because the income shows up on your personal tax return. And as you learned just a moment ago when I showed you my screen, that penalty is currently 0.5% per month or part of a month that you don't pay them, all right? So that's, failure to file for the individual and the business, and failure to pay for the individual and the business. Now, for state taxes, I just want to address that real quick. I couldn't possibly, make a video that talks about all the penalties and taxes for each state. So they're all a little bit different. So make sure you kind of look up that information online as it relates to your state. Some of the states are more strict than the Fed and the IRS. Some of them are about the same, all right? So with that said, I hope you learned something, right? Let me know if that was helpful. Another place to visit to go and find helpful information is my website, which is navimirajcpa.com. So let me quickly introduce you to that and show you a couple of things that are available for free there. So again, the website is navimirajcpa.com, and something that's not free is my course that I created. Check that out if you're interested. Basically, I take you from knowing much at all about taxes, specifically business taxes, and teaching you everything, all the strategies that I use with my clients, how to use QuickBooks, how to implement all those strategies. You can learn a lot from there. But some free stuff is an expense tracker that you can download. You can use this tool to track your income and expenses throughout the year. If you're a sole proprietorship, it can even estimate how much taxes you might expect to pay. That will cover self-employment taxes and income taxes, and not just income taxes, but federal and state. You can also go and click on one of these entities to file your business, so an LLC or an S Corp or a partnership. You can click on these links or these logos here, and it'll take you to the website and file, some of which I know are free. Sometimes people have questions and I can't answer them in the comments, so if you want to schedule a Q&A session, you're welcome to do so. And my video library is here, so if you want to get caught up in some other content that I create, you can check that out. But that's my website there in a nutshell. So I'll kind of leave you with that. If you're watching on YouTube, those two videos I referenced earlier are going to pop up. So you can watch those and learn more about what I was talking about related to, do you need to file a tax return, right? If you're an S Corp or a partnership or what have you, and how the S Corp taxes work. Again, it applies to partnerships as well, and how that sort of profit from the business flows into your personal return. I think that will help you out a lot and solidify your understanding of that concept. All right. So with that said, I'll see you in the next video.